Today, there is in fact some rest for the weary.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Burnt on Religion. This is the podcast for those who have been burnt, who are currently being burnt, and those who are avoiding being burnt. I am Ashton. I am trying out for young Wolverine. This is the retired Thor. This is the old Magneto. Welcome to Burnt on Religion.
I don't know if everybody can see this. If you're just listening, then you're not going to see this. But if you are viewing right now, look at Ashton. There is a difference here. He has lost his beard and went down to mutton chops. And I do want to commend you for that, Ashton. Several episodes ago, we talked about how Josh Gregson was our youth pastor at this church.
Damn.
Life has happened, and things have changed. And
Lots of crazy ways.
Yes. Josh and his wife had a daughter, and life has changed. And Ashton has stepped up to become the youth pastor of our church. And he challenged the teenagers. Yes, golf clap.
Thank you.
He challenged the teenagers to hit a certain number of youth for the teen class, and they reached their goal. And that is why young Wolverine is sitting next to us today.
It was a nail biter. It was.
Yeah, they came in on that last day though, and they filled the place up. So
it was awesome.
Yeah, good job to all the teenagers out there.
And young is fitting. It did shave a couple years off you.
Yeah,
in all honesty.
It did.
Yeah, I went from 40
Well, I thought you
to
were
like
40,
22.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Jerk.
Is that all I need to do?
Be a jerk? Yes.
Well, that's too much work for me.
We can't talk about Josh being a jerk, or we talk about Josh trying to shave years off.
You little more color.
Yeah, there's some.
I have other issues. Is it the fact that I'm old?
There would be. That's part one.
Right. It's the fact that I'm older. That's the main obstacle of looking young.
Excuses.
Seasoned.
Excuses.
Yes. Distinguished.
Experienced.
All those things. Yeah.
And
we can stop right now.
travel.
I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling all right. Let's get to the episode rather than trying to make me feel better or worse.
all right. Well, with all that in the past, so we talk about the old saying, ain't no rest for the weary. One of those, but we had to change it around a little bit today. So we got to say that there's rest. So one of the common things that we get hit with that is always present is going to be the 10 Commandments, and we can talk about it in a lot of different ways, in all the ways that we fall short of the 10 Commandments and what their purpose is, what they're for, how they can show us that you're not going to keep all of them, but you can keep some of them because we're, neither one of you I don't think are killers, but I'm not going to delve too deep in case I don't want to know.
That's what they all say.
So many of them start to deal with, and we're dealing with one of those ones that's going to cross one of those lines that's also going to deal with the thing. When you're dealing with a book like the Bible, and you're dealing with something that's going to cross not only cultures, but it's also crossing time. So here's another part. We're dealing with us in the modern day, and we're dealing with a New Testament that also involves the gospel going to Gentile people, which again, all three of us are.
Yes.
So one of those culture things, and one of the common ones that's going to be, is a common question, is the Sabbath day. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy.
The fourth commandment.
It is the fourth commandment.
Yes, and it's the one, ironically, everybody can, not very many people can even quote the 10 Commandments. No. They say, you're not supposed to lie or kill, right? And then after that, they're like, I don't remember the rest.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying the hardest to keep the 10 Commandments, and yet they can't even quote the 10 Commandments. Yeah. We don't do so good. But then you get the Sabbath day one, and so I go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I know you guys too, because I see you there.
Yeah.
Every Sunday.
Yeah, this is...
I don't know what you're doing on Saturday, though.
Yeah. But this
Lawn work?
That is true. If I do it, I did walk Saturday.
How
far did I go is the question.
That's right.
That's a history, but I'm not going to look at my phone just in case.
Right.
I'm not going to check my health
Were you
app.
even worried about it? Were you even thinking about it?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I was not. But
hey, there's that line.
Yes. But it is one of those ones that, and it's one that people have always kind of we have the cultures, and it's all different, but it's one where we have our holy day. We have church. We have, that's the Sunday night service. Defending one. It's the day that's dedicated aside. This is Sunday, the day. Yes. This is the day that is set aside for it, and that is the whole purpose, and that's how we keep it, quote unquote, with air quotes. If you're watching,
holy.
Yeah, that is how we do it.
Right.
But like I said there with the walking and things like that, and there's so much when you talk about the ways the Pharisees and Sadducees and all of them tried to catch Christ in the New Testament. Yes. There's so much more that goes into the Sabbath.
Right.
And especially when that commandment is even given and all the rules that go into it when you're talking about the Pentateuch and the Old Testament law and all those things being given, when you have that, I don't think any of us are keeping it in that exact. If we're going off context, which is important on this podcast, I don't know if we're keeping it in that context. So I think
we're butchering the Sabbath.
I think we're messing it up somewhere. So maybe we just kind of delve into the fourth commandment. What are we talking about? Can we even keep it and live in this modern society or be in this way and keep it? And do we even have to with the New Testament? Is it important at all? Right. What's the point?
Yeah, and I have a lot of people that come up to me, even in our town, which you wouldn't think this topic would come up that often, but it does. So I invite somebody to the church, and what time are your services? And I said, it's Sunday and they stop right there. God said, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. The Sabbath is Saturday. And by the way, we're not denying that. The Sabbath is Saturday. And I mow my lawn on Saturday. By the time I get to Saturday, that's when I finally have a break. Yeah. And what do I do with my break? I work really hard because that's the only time I can catch up with all the work that's been building up all week. So we're not saying that Sabbath is not Saturday. We do agree that it is, but we attend church on Sunday, and there is that hurdle that we have to get over, and we've got to place the whole topic back into context.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's one where, and that is true. It is more common than people think. I've never personally done it, but I know quite a few people who have gone to church who just go to churches on Saturdays. Yeah. And it's a whole thing, and it is one that is a lot more common than I think people understand. So I think the best thing to do is to just kind of dive right into it.
Let's do it.
Let's just get into there. So let's open up with just a couple verses, and let's go with rather. So let's go with James chapter 2 and verse number 10. For whoever shall keep the whole law and yet stumble in one point, he is guilty of all. So already,
don't mess up in one place.
We are setting ourselves up to. That's never what you want to hear. It's if I'm running a race of hurdles. If I'm looking at this track of hurdles, don't put more hurdles out in front of me.
Right.
Because that's just more chances to fail.
Yeah.
So this ain't great. There's a lot of hurdles. There's a hurdle. There's a hurdle in my landing zone after the first hurdle here with this verse.
That's a rough race right there.
And then we're going to obviously get to Exodus 20 and verse number 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. So
pile in those two verses on top of each other. Yeah. If you offend in one point, you're guilty of all of them.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are 613 laws. It's not 10. So let's
lot of hurdles. Yeah, a lot of hurdles.
613 commandments, not 10 commandments. Yeah, you're starting to feel the pressure, aren't you?
I'm just dying.
So when you add all of that, and it says, hey, if you mess up in one point, you messed up in all, and every one of us have just confessed to the fact that we work on Saturday.
I did not, sir.
You did not.
I did not confess.
Do you work on Saturday?
I'm not confessing.
Well, two of us have confessed to the fact that we have stumbled in this one point.
Good for you.
So I guess we're guilty of all. So Ashton here is living the dream. So we just put those two verses together. So now we've already claimed guilt.
We have laid a difficult track out before ourselves here.
We are minutes into this episode.
So, it is quite the conundrum, and it seems like you're almost even growing up in a traditional religious sense and background. There's so much that comes with the other 9 commandments. There's don't take the Lord's name in vain, have no other gods before Him. Kill, steal, covet,
right?
All those ones. There's honor thy father and mother, and there's so many ones that have simple. They're almost simple, practical. We can understand them,
right?
And we use them. And this one's kind of like, and Sunday, and and we have a day, and so
right. Yeah.
We can follow the other 9, but this one always kind of seems to be on the back burner because we'll just fill it in. We have close enough, and
so
we would violate the law, which means we're guilty of all those other ones that we're still staying in line.
The other 612 have been butchered if you messed up on the 613th one.
Yeah.
So me growing up, that was the justification for us is we go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we work on Saturday, but we go to church on Sunday, and Sunday is the new Sabbath. The problem is, I don't know where that verse is that says Sunday is the new Sabbath. So we're making our own rules now.
Yeah. But also, and that's in certain defense, the old rules, some were added.
Yes, that's true.
But that is just, there's so much that it's almost tied into it, and you have people saying, well, it's the first day of the week because it's the day that Jesus rose, and there's so much that we see tied into it, and we see why Sunday's picked for the new Sabbath, and we see the new Sabbath again, lots of air quotes and floating around out there.
Yeah.
But you're still left with, okay, it's not the new Sabbath, and you don't have a verse for it or this and that. You have the first day of the week, and the commandment is we keep the Sabbath. That is true, but to keep it holy.
Right.
So there is an element of this that you are dealing with something divine, something spiritual. So there is weight that goes into this commandment, obviously, and that is something that, okay, now if we have Sunday, you can't throw that on the back burner with that keep it holy aspect of it. I think is often overlooked because Sunday is the holy day and you go to church twice or what you do now, and it's the day you rest and you think about everything. But when you have that keep it holy and you throw it on the back burner, now and that's another one, is how do you even keep it holy? What does that mean to do it and to keep that commandment? You're dealing with stuff that is, you're starting to dig a hole and make this race even tougher.
The fact that you brought up the keep it holy part, I refer to this as parking lot salvation a lot, where you fight with your family all the way to church, and then before you get out of the car and go into the building, you tell those kids, hey, everybody straighten up, put your smiles on, let's go into the building, and we're going to look like that perfect family when we walk in there, and then we will continue this fight when we get out. What part of keep it holy are we trying to shoot for there? When we're fighting all the way to church and fighting all the way home, and the afternoon's bad, but by the time you get to that Sunday night service, that parking lot salvation kicks in again, and I don't think any of us are getting this one right. Whether we do it on Saturday or we make Sunday our new Sabbath, and then we forget to keep that holy because we bicker all the time. Either way, we're messing this up. We're messing it up. So this commandment, Sabbath day. What's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of the commandment? Are we supposed to keep it? Aren't we supposed to keep it? Because I know there's probably listeners out there. There's a good chance there are listeners out there that are saying, "Hey, but I'm still doing it. I'm still doing everything I can. So let's clean it up. Let's clean it all the way through."
So that's okay. So if we say, and we hear all the reasons why Sunday's justified, but then you also have a justified reason why you could say it's Saturday and why you go on Saturday. All right, then let's clear it up. So what is the purpose? What is the point of the commandment? Why is it even given? Why was this commandment even given? What is the purpose of it?
You're just asking that?
I am just asking.
Okay,
I will.
We're just going to get to the answer right now, folks. We are 13 minutes into this.
If I just say it, then what's the point of that?
All right. So what's the purpose of the Sabbath? God gives the law of the Sabbath because he wants them to keep it in mind. There's something it's pointing to. Every time God gave a festival or a feast or a holy day or this is the beginning of this and this is the ending of this, the lamb without a spot, without blemish, everything he gives them is a type, shadow, and a picture pointing to something else. And the reason the Sabbath is given is because it is pointing to a bigger picture. Something is casting the shadow, and the Sabbath day is the shadow of the real event that is being cast. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's the purpose of giving the shadow or giving that type or that picture to them for them to observe. We know the lamb, they sacrificed a lamb, and we know that couldn't save anybody from their sins. That's why they had to sacrifice the lamb over and over again.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of sacrificing a lamb? To keep it in their mind that this is a shadow and something else is casting that shadow.
Okay.
It keeps it in their mind.
All right. Pictures and times. Okay, so let's throw a few wrenches at this. All right.
Let's do it.
So that's
Stir the
going
pot.
to be what we have to do. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we're going to have to deal with things because we're going to have to bring this, like I said, there's times when Christ was caught. Again, lots of air quotes. I get
Lots
all the
of
air
air
quotes.
quotes.
Stuff.
You know
I'm just
what?
gonna throw it out
Insert
there.
air quote where you want to.
Ashton's is going to be if you're watching this, just because you need to see Ashton in all his
Glory.
barefaced
Yes,
beauty
right?
today.
Yes.
He'll be my, to say, honorary air quote. So if I say air quotes, just you can look and then you can see Ashton in
There
all
you
his
go.
face. So
There you go.
let me
Nailed
think.
it.
So
Got
when
it.
they caught twice, air quote, bang, there we go.
Got it.
There's so many things like that where it was just trying to get these things. So let's look at some of these specific scenarios.
Okay.
And we can kind of deal with this in terms of that. If we're trying to get, it's a shadow, it's a type, it's a picture, it's a aspect that we can see. It's pointing to something.
Right, yes.
So here's what we got. So let's
cause
look
some
at
trouble.
one. All right. So a male child, and this is dealing with the children of Israel, the Jewish faith type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When a male child was born, he was to be circumcised on a specific day. So Leviticus
Yes.
12:3.
Yes.
And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised.
Okay.
So what if the 8th day is the Sabbath?
Okay. So
you go.
Okay. So now you got two commands. One is to do it on the 8th day.
Yeah.
What if the 8th day falls on Saturday?
Yeah. So there you go. So there's
Okay.
that one. Here we
All
go.
right.
Deuteronomy 22:1. Here's
Okay.
another scenario for you. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and hide yourself from them. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. Verse 3. You shall do the same with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment. With any lost thing of your brother's which he has lost and you have found, you shall do likewise. You must not hide yourself. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down along the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help him lift them up again.
Okay.
So, you know, I love animals. I have two dogs.
Okay.
And I love them.
Right.
You know, often places I need to go to work. There's times I got to be places, and I've learned something very important.
What's that?
My dogs don't care.
That's true. That's true. They don't care about time at all.
So, when it comes to important things, laws, time,
Animals
what
don't
day
care.
it is,
Yeah. Animals don't care.
animals they could give two craps.
Yeah.
They do not.
You know, I think they can tell time though, because we feed our dog around 4 o'clock every day, and she knows, hey, it's 4 o'clock.
Oh,
you know,
they don't
it's-
care about any of my time. They
Right.
care about their time.
Just about what they want. So they don't care about your Sabbath law.
Yeah.
They just care if it's 4 o'clock on your Sabbath.
Yeah. So animals do not care.
They don't.
So they're not going to adhere to the Sabbath. So what if they fall down in the road?
On a Saturday.
Sabbath day.
Yes.
So-
those are good questions.
Here we go. If it's important, the Sabbath day is important.
Yep.
And there are many rules surrounding it. What about these scenarios? What do we do with these?
You got a problem because you've got two conflicting laws. If that dumb donkey falls down on a Saturday,
He's got to be dumb.
Nah, well, because it didn't follow the law. I don't know.
What-
But if it falls in a ditch or whatever on a Saturday, that's going to take some work. Donkeys, well, they're stubborn and
Yeah.
they're heavy.
Yeah,
So
they are.
you're going to have to work on the Sabbath if you're going to follow this law of helping, your brother in
Yeah.
that scenario. But then you've got the other law of it's Saturday. Donkey, you're on your own until,
Yeah.
till tomorrow.
You are just a tad too heavy, but so you have
Right.
exceeded the weight limit for lifting today.
But then you've got the kid that's born, the male child that's born, and the circumcision is supposed to happen on the 8th day. Well, if that falls on a Saturday, you still
Hold it.
you've got a problem.
Yeah.
You've got a problem because there are two conflicting laws at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, the very good questions.
And that's so we have something that's obviously very extremely important to God.
Yes.
In dealing with the Sabbath day.
Yep.
But and you said it on Sunday. It's something where God doesn't waste anything, and this is part of the law that He has given the Israelites.
Right.
So this stuff's important as well.
Yeah.
He has given this for a reason.
So important.
So now we're where are we conflicting? Where are we conflicting? And then it gets more intricate
Yes.
when we have something called the Sabbath year.
It builds and builds and builds.
That's a long time.
Yes.
That's not just a Saturday.
No.
And so Leviticus 25:1. And the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, When you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard.
Okay, so every 7th year, they're supposed to let that land rest.
Yep.
That is a rest, which the Sabbath is a time of rest. So we
Yep.
need to emphasize that. It is rest. That's that day where you do no work on the Sabbath because it's rest. But on this year, 6 years, you can sow your fields, you can do all that, but on the 7th year, you're supposed to just stop and let it rest. And by the way, they've proven that is really healthy for the ground.
That is a very good farming.
Yes,
technique. Yep.
it's really good. So now we have a law about a day, and we have a law about the 7th year. There we found more rest. So the thing is, it's we haven't even reached the top of this yet, because we have a day, we have a year, but it gets bigger. The Sabbath law gets bigger. Yeah, it
Keeps growing.
It continues to grow, because one of my favorite parts about the Sabbath law is the year of Jubilee. Everybody familiar with the year of Jubilee? Okay. The year of Jubilee is one of the greatest topics in the Sabbath topic itself. The year of Jubilee was that year when so much happened. It's not just, okay, the ground, we don't get to dig on the ground this year. We don't get to plant. And Saturday comes along, we don't get to work. Year of Jubilee was amazing. So let me read Leviticus 25:10. It says, And you shall consecrate the 15th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Or I'm sorry, the 50th year, not 15th. Sorry about that.
I was trying to do math.
Yeah,
for
the
that.
math is not going to work with
Wait a
15th.
second.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shall be a jubilee for you, and each of you shall return to his possession, or return to his possession, and each of you shall return to his family. So every 7th year was a Sabbath year, as you just pointed out, Josh.
Yep.
It was that was a Sabbath year. The land would rest. After 6 Sabbath years have passed, so that's 49 years for all you mathematicians out there. So you've got 49 years. After that 49th year, that 50th year, which I just read wrong, that 50th year would be the year of Jubilee, where all the debts would be paid and all of the captives were set free. If you were a slave, you would be set free. If you had a debt, it would be erased. And that's a really cool year. Mm-hmm. So the year of Jubilee still falls under this Sabbath law thing, where finally you're just waiting. I've been a slave for 10 years, or I've been a slave for 40 years, whatever. You're waiting for that year of Jubilee, and it's over. You're finally set free. And that's one of the coolest aspects of the Sabbath category.
Yep.
That I like.
Wow.
And it's okay. So we can obviously say that it's important. And I think one of the things that you understand with the Sabbath, and when we talk about something dealing with one of the original commandments given by God to the children of Israel, if it's on the stone tablets, it is one of the 10.
Sure.
So we can understand that when we're dealing with this, it's going to be what's overlap, where does it supersede, what is this? But we can also understand that if you violate this, it's going to come with some form of consequence. Something's going to happen.
Because it is a law.
So if we're going to talk about, okay, does one supersede the other, or this and that, if we're even going to have that discussion, how seriously does God take the law of the Sabbath? Is it like, okay, hey, listen, you went too far, or you did this, or you got the donkey out of there, and you shouldn't have done that, dumb donkey. But so
dumb donkey.
Let's look at something like that. Let's look at what he thinks of when you violate the law of the Sabbath.
Okay,
it was important.
Yeah.
So Leviticus 26:33. I will scatter you among the nations and draw out a sword after you. Your land shall be desolate and your cities waste. Then the land shall enjoy its Sabbaths as long as it lies desolate, and you are in the enemy's land. Then the land shall rest and enjoy its Sabbaths As long as it lies desolate, it shall rest. For the time it did not rest on your Sabbaths when you dwelt in it.
You know what? That donkey can stay there.
Right.
Sorry, it's going.
So this is referring to the Sabbath years,
Yep.
where you're supposed to let the land rest every seventh year, and if they didn't do that, what did it say? Your cities will be desolate. Your land,
Everything's desolate.
it's all gone.
It's
And that's
all recovering.
Yeah. So God's pretty serious about this one.
Yeah.
He's like, I will take you down. Let the land rest. It's not that he threw out a suggestion. This is a law, and the law comes with consequence.
Yep.
And that's the consequence.
And that's a big consequence.
It is.
So
it is.
And not even with getting into the violation of if what happens if you don't help the donkey or this and that, you are left with so much that you just see how serious that is.
Yeah.
And is just for sake of time and everything else, we're going to stay on topic here with what it is in terms of the Sabbath. But so much of this is getting into Old Testament law and all of these different things, and there's so much that goes into it, but you can see the severity of it, and it's still a question today because the Ten Commandments are prevalent. Most people know the essence of them, or you go to the courthouse and they were there at one point in time, or people talk about them being there or whatnot, and it's an understanding that they are prevalent even in modern society.
Right.
So people understand them. But one of the things that we're going to bring up into this conversation is another, I think, especially when dealing with religion and in religious circles, is another modern topic of discussion that comes up, and we'll get into it here. That's a lot of Old Testament law, but we exist in New Testament type stuff, which is true.
It is true.
It's a New Testament.
It is.
And we're going to have to address something here that from a distance, and maybe from the outside looking in, or from an unknown perspective, you could say, I could see that. We have a God who's like, hey, if you don't keep Saturday holy, if you don't keep that seventh year holy in terms of the verse that we read, then desolation.
Right.
And now we're going to bring in Jesus, who is God.
Right.
And we're going to be different. We're going to present a God of Old Testament and God in New Testament who will seem different.
Yes. It's true,
but are not different.
And before we stir that pot, let me point out that the Babylonian captivity, they were in for 70 years. There was a 70-year captivity, and the reason was because of all the Sabbaths that they did not keep. So that was the reason why they were there for 70 years, is because it was God says, hey, by the way, I've been keeping track of all the years you did not let it rest. So that's how many years you're going to be in captivity. He even told them that's the reason why you're going to be there for that long. They knew when they were getting out. So he was serious. He was very serious about it. So then you flip the script and go to the New Testament, like you're saying, and we've got a lot more to deal with. Because he was serious.
You're going to have him in the form of Jesus, who is like, hey, you're doing this on the Sabbath. And he goes,
Yeah, so what?
Yeah, I do what I want.
That's how it appears.
And so you almost, and that again leads to that discussion where, hey, again, I'm keeping track. I'm keeping a tally.
Right.
Captivity for you,
and then
you get into the New Testament, and it's, hey, you're not keeping the Sabbath.
Yeah. Your disciples are picking corn.
You got the harsh God of the Old Testament and the God of love in the New Testament, and it leads to that conflicting discussion. But they're the same, and it's an understanding of who He is, and it's His character. Again, we always talk about it in these episodes that it is the same, and we can see it.
The God that doesn't change.
And it is. It's something like this where you talk about, okay, we don't go on a Saturday or Sunday, but it still plays into the character of God, and I think that's why these topics are so important.
And
again, to dive into it.
Yep.
So we get into
bring Jesus up.
We get into Jesus. So we're going to get into the New Testament. So we're going to bring it a little closer to us and a little less in dealing with strictly children of Israel and Jewish law. So
we're within 2,000 years.
Yeah, we are dialing it home.
That's right.
So in Matthew 12, verse 10, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand, and they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath, that they might accuse him?
Yep.
So here is trap for Jesus.
Yep, always.
Set him up. And we have his response. So, verse 11, then he said to them, what man is there among you who has one sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not lay hold of it and lift it out? of how much more value than is a man than a sheep. Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath.
There's that donkey issue. You've got your livestock falling. You have falling livestock. And he says, hey, if
these ditches.
Yeah, you're right. So Jesus just brought up that law. If the donkey or an ox or a sheep or whatever falls into a pit on the Sabbath, would you not help them out of the pit, even though it's Sabbath? So he brings that law up. Like, wouldn't you do that even if it was the Sabbath? Mm-hmm. Jesus is asking the Pharisees that of, hey, if that were to happen, would you still obey that law? Yeah. Even if it was a Sabbath? And it's a good question.
Yep. Yeah. And then here's, and talking about the conundrum we had again with the circumcision. Mm-hmm. There's another time he's presented with it where he healed a man, and then he's confronted the Pharisees with the same issue, with that circumcision issue in John 7. It says, Moses therefore gave you a circumcision, not that is from Moses, but from the fathers, and you circumcise a man on the Sabbath. If a man receives circumcision on the Sabbath, so that the law of Moses should not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a man completely well on the Sabbath?
Right. Yeah.
It's crisscross.
Jesus is pointing out that there are times when you have to do what's right, even if it's Saturday.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to do what's right. If your friend or your brother or whatever has, he's struggling because his ox or his donkey or his sheep got lost or fell into a pit, you're like, man, you're just gonna have to hold out. Yeah. Sabbath's almost over, and then I can do that. No, you're going to help them. And Jesus is pointing out, you would do what is right on the Sabbath, even if it was the Sabbath. And now you're mad because I healed somebody. It's not like Jesus is pouring down sweat healing either. He just says, hey, you're healed. How much work was that? Nothing. But they're still trying to trap him.
Yep. This is, and again, it's almost like you begin to see. You can see the opening of that picture of, we can start to connect the dots that we're the same here. Right. It is that love, that God of love who is connecting it all here, where there's something here for us that he is providing, that it's trying to show them something, and somehow in some way man still finds a way to just muddy the waters a little bit. Like, just add some extra stuff in there. Religion, we can just add some stuff. Right. Add a little bit of that secret sauce.
Yeah, so the Sabbath was misunderstood then, and it's misunderstood now. Yep. And right then, Jesus, of all people, we can't really point fingers at Jesus. I'm like, shame on you, Jesus. Yeah. We don't have a place to do that. He did what was right, but we say, hey, there's a conflict here. There's no conflict, and we'll get to the answer there of how there is no conflict. But we can see that Sabbath was clearly viewed in a negative way then, or in an unhealthy way. Yep. And today it is too, and that's why we're doing this episode.
Yep. And so we have more of the clarification from Jesus himself in Mark chapter 2 and verse 27, and he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes.
So many laws, and a lot of them are on the Sabbath, that there was the hurdles. You can't, after a while, you can't jump a hurdle without landing on a hurdle. Right. And then you're just falling down.
Yeah.
And then, according to James, you just failed the whole thing.
My dad used to say the Pharisees were so judgmental that if they saw Jesus walking on water, they would wonder how far he was walking, so they could say, hey, that was too many steps on the Sabbath. Mm-hmm. Your guy's walking on the water, and they're still like, count the steps. Let's see if we could trap him. The guy's walking on water, and they're just so caught up in their religious traditions that he can't be the Messiah because he's actually pointing out that they're wrong.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. It was so ridiculous.
And so what you have is a picture, like you said, the shadow, the type.
Yes. And
that's what you have to see in that verse. And what he's trying for them to point out is that look again, and so much of what Jesus says, even to his own disciples, so many times in the New Testament is just like, look here.
You're right.
Look at me.
Right here.
It's this. Right. I'm standing right here. Yeah. And so much of it is the picture, like you said. It's the shape. It's the shadow. It's the forecast. It's the type. And the Sabbath is pointing to Jesus and rest. And like we talked about, that there is rest for the weary.
That
there
yes.
is this break, and there is rest for your souls.
Yeah.
There's a handy dandy verse that says it, but
Yes, right,
that is what all he's trying to say. And he says it so many times that you've convoluted this thing so much. There's so much you're trying to do. There's so much work you're putting into it.
Yeah.
Take a break.
So these people
Right here.
these people in the Old Testament were working so hard to keep the law. And by the way, nobody in the history of mankind has ever been able to keep the law except for Jesus Christ. But they are trying so hard to keep the law, and they keep falling in so many places. And that's why they have to bring a lamb every year because they messed up. So they're bringing this every year, and the law is pointing to the fact that you can't keep it. It's not a list of requirements to be pleasing to God. It's a list to show you can't. The law is our schoolmaster or our tutor, pointing us to Christ. So the law is the shadow, pointing us to what's casting the shadow.
Yep.
The law is telling us you need grace because you just can't cut it here. So God gives the Sabbath also. What's casting the shadow? Jesus Christ. In me you'll find rest. Casting the shadow of take a day to rest, and use this to remind yourself you're going to need rest.
Yep.
And you just can't do it through the law. That's just a lot of work.
Yep.
A lot of work.
Yeah. Everyone needs rest.
Yes.
Everyone needs a break. It's a common reminder. I mean, like you said, there's so many simple and practical things in it. Even you talked about, I grew up around a farm community. You had to let land rest.
Right.
There were simple things in it. Again, you can work yourself to death, and it's possible. There's times where you rest, and just to have, again, you see that in the provision and the care, and then even in the law where it's just this, I give it because of the love to care. But when you slow down, when you stop, and so it's that day, whether it's that day of the week or that day of the week, when you slow down, when you stop, it's to, what are you thinking about? What are you reflecting on? And so, I stop and I rest my body and my mind a little bit, but where's my soul resting in that moment? And that's what that day is for. Because why would God need to rest when he makes everything? And again, it's a type and a point, and it's a picture to point us. Everything is pointing us to Christ from beginning to end of Scripture is pointing us in that direction.
Right.
And so just something like this topic is just all pointing us to Christ.
Right.
And again, you have Colossians 2:16. So let no one judge you in food or drink, or regarding a festival or a new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of things to come, but the substance is of Christ.
That's right.
From beginning to end, it's all pointing to Christ.
Right. And even today, let's say you work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and you don't take a day off to rest. Do you have Christ? That's the question.
Yeah.
Do you have Christ? And if you have Christ, then you have been made acceptable. The work is over. Jesus says it is finished.
Yeah.
The work is over. If you don't observe a day, that verse that you just read says, let no one judge you in these things because you didn't take a day off or whatever. Don't let anybody judge you on these things because the substance is of Christ.
Yep.
So if you have Christ, you do have that rest. But still today, I still get caught in the store or whatever, and I invite somebody to church, and like, why don't you do church on Saturday? Let me throw a little irony out there. Sunday, if that was our Sabbath, which by the way, it's not. There were air quotes there, man.
Sorry.
So,
wrong Josh.
So, on Sunday we say
designated guy.
That's right. You're designated air quotes, man. So, what we do is we say Jesus rose again on Sunday. So therefore, that's our new Sabbath. There's no verse that says that. We just thought that's a cool rule. It makes us feel better. So I'm going to lay out a little secret for all those listeners out there. The day I work the hardest as a pastor of a church is Sunday.
I know.
I am exhausted.
Your 1 hour.
Yeah, my 1 hour a week. Yes, that's a fun little rumor. We should do a whole podcast on that. So
I don't feel like it.
Yeah, too much work. So now the pastor says, "Hey, Sunday's supposed to be the day of rest. Make sure you rest." That guy's been working all week long, and he gets up and he delivers that sermon. And like this past Sunday, I didn't get out of here for almost 2 hours after church because I was counseling. that's a lot of work on that day. But you know what? I didn't violate any law because I'm not under any law. I do have Christ, and I have found rest for my soul. And that's because Jesus is the substance. The substance is of Christ.
You know what? I think maybe the best way we can talk about it as we round this out is that handy-dandy verse. We go to Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
Yes. It's right there.
Yeah.
He is the Lord of the Sabbath, like that verse you read earlier. He says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. It's over. I am what that shadow was pointing to. This is the finish line, guys. The race is over. You don't have to work so hard anymore. We hit this.
Yep.
I am what it was pointing to. Pharisees had a problem with that.
Yeah.
You know, they did not
Naturally.
want him to
They
be
had
the
problems
Messiah.
with everything.
And they did. So
They had problems.
the one thing that I love about the story of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, actually, there's so much I love about that story because it's everything to us. But it's the fact that it fell on the year of Jubilee. And that's why I love the year of Jubilee so much, because that's when the captives are set free. That's when all the debt's erased. And salvation is exactly what happened for us. You know, that's what happened for us at salvation. The debt was erased. Those that were slaves to sin are no longer slaves of sin, but have become slaves of righteousness. It's taking captivity captive. That's what salvation is. So even the year of Jubilee, the Sabbath years, the Sabbath day, all pointing to one person, which is where we find rest for our souls.
Yep.
What?
Yep. So the topic of the Sabbath, everybody soak this in. It's okay.
Yep.
It's okay to work on Saturday. It's okay to go to church on Sunday. It's okay to go to church on Saturday.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that you come down and remember in the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Well, it's the Lord of the Sabbath. How do you keep it holy? He is holy. He is holy.
Yeah.
You take that time to think about it, and again, that's what He wants. Put your soul and rest in Him.
You're celebrating the Lord of the Sabbath.
That is how to do it. You want to get that commandment for whatever you want to do it for.
Right.
You don't have to, but that is the best way to do it.
Yep.
Is to just put your rest of your soul into Him. It doesn't matter the day.
I find it interesting that in the New Testament, you see them meeting on the first day of the week a lot. You don't see them meeting on the seventh day of the week a lot, but the first day of the week a lot. And what they call that is the Lord's Day. It's referenced that way in the New Testament. It's the Lord's Day. But why did they switch? Why did these guys switch? Because it's over.
Yeah.
And that's the Sabbath law is over, which, by the way, applies to all of the laws. Jesus fulfilled all the laws, and the Bible even says He fulfilled the laws in you as a child of God. So the work truly is over. That doesn't mean we don't do what's right.
Yeah.
We just do what we do out of our love for God, and that is what keeps us. You don't usually go out and killing and lying and stealing if you're living out of love.
No, I think you tend to be a little better behaved than that.
When you're doing it out of love,
Yeah,
usually.
But
Yeah.
But so okay, so you said it right there, and I think that's
Unless
a
it's
decent
a crime of passion.
trend. You say a lot of worrying things, but I think it's almost a good transition going into the next episode. Is okay. So you say laws are fulfilled in us. So there's a lot of laws, and we hear, and especially in religious circles now, we hear a lot of laws still coming down, and some are taken off. Air quotes. What we call biblical principle.
Yes.
That are thrown out there as, law that come down, and we hear different things. And so you said that those are fulfilled in us as well.
Are you talking about legalistic things that churches do today? Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are fulfilled in us also.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to address certain things, because they can range from appearance to behavioral standards to all these different things, and you can. I think that would be an interesting topic to address, and maybe hit a couple of them. I think we should.
The judgment laws?
Yeah.
The laws that we use to
And we could even personalize it a little bit. We could find some things I think that we can personalize some.
You know what? We can personalize them. You know, we
can.
can make ourselves look bad.
We have the technology.
I don't know how I could do that.
We can. Yes, you can, sir. So yeah, let's put ourselves on the chopping block because I've been there before. People have placed me on the chopping block. I've been judged before. I think everybody out there's been judged before. That's why this is called Burnt on Religion.
Yeah.
So I think bringing ourselves up and putting our own necks on the chopping block in the next episode would be a good move.
All right.
Let's take the risk.
All right.
Proud of you.
Big brain. Air quotes.
Yeah. Good time. Yeah. So remember, the Sabbath is fulfilled. Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. It's been accomplished through the person of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And that is the answer for what this Sabbath day conundrum. That is the answer for it. So don't carry the weight that people place on you to carry this thing. By the way, go to church on Sunday.
Yep.
If your church attends on Saturday, if that's when it's taking place, go on Saturday.
On Saturday. Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday.
We don't
just
judge
it's good to gather with them. So go to church, but don't carry the Sabbath day law. It's too much weight. And if Jesus didn't do it, and he wants us to follow his patterns, I think we're safe.
Yeah.
I think we got this.
Yep.
I think that's good authority right there.
That's right.
So,
It's a good place to go.
that's a good one. So, again, next week, we'll put ourselves on the chopping block, and we will
It's going to
see
be
you
good
then.
times. See you next week.